Hey everyone, I'm Katie Martin. Welcome back to another episode of Create Your Character. This semester, I'll be doing things a little differently. Rather than a new mini project each episode, I'll be doing a series of tutorials on a single cosplay. So over these next couple months, I'll be showing you how I am making my Hunter cosplay from Destiny 2. I've never really made anything like this before, so there's going to be a lot of trial and error. But I'm excited to share this process with you all this semester. For this first episode, I'll be starting with the pants, so stick around if you want to see the start of this build. So the first thing that I'm going to do is cut out my pattern, and the pattern that I'm using is just a basic pants pattern. It is the McCall's M8057 pattern, and I got it at Joann's. The inspiration for this cosplay is the Empyrean Cartographer ornament set, and it's not going to be an exact copy of the Resilient Laurel shader, but that's the inspiration I had for it. I'm using different shades of blue. I really like the blue shaders in the game, so I just kind of went around Joann's and picked out some really cool blue fabrics that I liked and decided that I wanted to use. So again, it's not going to be like an exact replication of the photo, but it's a bunch of different blue colors that I thought looked well together and wanted to use. Here I am cutting out the front pant legs since I already cut out the back pant legs. The back sides, I guess. I had to make my own pattern for the little hexagon shapes on the side of the pants. I did this by putting a piece of newspaper over the normal pattern, just tracing out the shape and then cutting it out. Then once I had it cut out, I went ahead and cut out the fabric that I wanted to use. I used this light blue kind of shiny fabric. I really like this fabric, and I already had a lot of this, which is another reason why I decided to go with a blue shader kind of look for it. So I cut out 4 of these shapes total, 2 for the front and then 2 for the back. Now I'm cutting these little notches in the corners. I'm doing this so it'll be easier to fold down and later sew onto the fabric. I'm also going to press them with an iron so they stay down without the pins. This will make it way easier when I go to sew it and attach it to the pant legs. Honestly, it's a good idea to get in the habit of sewing and pressing your seams anytime you start sewing. Now I'm going to pin the pieces to the pant legs, and since they are pressed, it is so much easier to do this. I do the pant legs side by side so I can make sure that the light blue little accent pieces are lined up, and I know that when I go and attach them together, they'll be as symmetrical as possible. Now that they are pinned, I'm going to go ahead and sew them to the pant legs. I want to be as close to the edge as possible. My sewing foot has a little gap in the middle, and so I kind of use that to line it up on the edge, and I just try to keep it in line with that center gap of the sewing foot to keep the lines nice and straight. Also making sure that I take out the pins before I sew over them. Some people sew right over the pins, but I'm scared to do that. I'm scared that the needle will hit it and will break, and then I'll have to rethread my needle and all that fun stuff. So I like to just take them out before I sew over them. Now that those light blue pieces are on the pant legs, I can go ahead and sew them together. So I'm actually going to use sewing clips because I find them so much easier and nicer to work with than pins, and I try to use them whenever possible. So I'm just going to clip the pieces together and go ahead and sew them together. I was using a 5/8 seam allowance. I don't know if this is big or small. I felt like it was a big seam allowance, but I also felt like the pants were going to be a little larger anyways, which is okay because they're not really form-fitting pants. But yeah, 5/8 is usually my go-to. I don't know what the golden rule of sewing is, but that's my rule. I also started sewing with the outside of the pant legs. I'm going to save the inside of the pant legs for later. Now I'm going to go ahead and hem the bottom of the pants. I want to do this before I sew the other side closed. This will make it a lot easier. Now I'm going to go ahead and pin the insides of the pant legs. And then just sew up along the middle. Now I'm going to go ahead and attach the two pant legs together. The only thing I'm making sure is in line is going to be that center seam, and then I just kind of line up the two edges. But the most important thing is to make sure that the center seam is as symmetrical as possible. I can kind of work around if the edges are a little off, but that center seam will throw everything off if it is not in line. This part was kind of tricky because it's a really tight curve, so I had to kind of start and stop a lot, and I wanted to make sure that my fabric wasn't getting bunched and I wasn't running over too many layers, or that another layer wasn't getting stuck under the presser foot, which happens a lot to me, unfortunately. So yeah, I went slow and steady, which you can't really tell because this is sped up. I don't actually sew this fast. Sorry if my hand's in the way. Yeah, it was tricky because the fabric kind of clumps up like this when you're doing really tight curves. Make sure to lock that stitch in, and now I'm going to go ahead and hem the top. I made sure this was a really wide hem. I wanted to have this kind of tube or loop around the top so I can put elastic through it there. But other than that, I'm just kind of going through as normal. Trying to make sure that my lines stay straight, so I do a lot of stopping and starting. Also, this part I had to use pins, and I wanted to make sure I took the pins out first. Unfortunately, I could not use clips here. Making sure to lock that stitch in, I'm sorry I did not realize how out of focus this part was, but basically I just attached the elastic to this fat curved needle and stuffed it through the top loop of the pants, through that hole, and fed it through the entire way. And then when I got to the end, I had this excess here that I sewed together and cut the ends off, and then just had to stuff that part into the top of the pants. It was kind of a tight fit, so it took some work, but once I got it in, I pinned it in place and then sewed the hole shut. And here's the finished look. I know they look kind of boring right now, but they're going to look a lot more exciting with the armor and the lights and then the little gold details that I have yet to add. In this first episode, I'll be putting a list of materials and tools I use for this in the description of the video. If you want to continue along with this Destiny 2 build with me, be sure to subscribe and watch for the next episode. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to tweet me at ZTV Goofing Off with the hashtag CreateYourCharacter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Goofing Off.